I think that the primary thing that the top 10% of students focus on is collecting results and not outcomes. Now, there's a very important but subtle difference between the two. Collecting results means that if your experiment or your research takes a bit of a wild turn or things don't go right, you can collect results to explain why things didn't go right and use that to put it in your thesis or your papers. Now, if you look at my PhD thesis, there are loads of things that went wrong. I chose this particularly because here the electron beam actually dissolved my sample, but it dissolved it in kind of a fun way, and I was able to use that as an analytical tool. Another thing that happened that went crazily wrong is that my solar cells were crystallizing. So instead of just saying, well, they're crystallizing, it's rubbish, I'm going to move on, I actually utilized the crystals for further experiments to create more graphs. The more and more I look through my thesis, the more I sort of see where things went wrong. If I was only focused on getting the end result of a working solar cell, I would have never filled up this thesis, because this thesis is full of mistakes, of experiments that didn't go well. But as soon as they didn't go well, you need to ask yourself, well, why didn't they go well? And how can I use this to create results? How can I use this to create a table or a graph or a specific schematic that can show what I learned from this failure? Why is this not working? And how do I work out why it's not working and use that to my advantage and get another table, another graph in my thesis? These don't fill up themselves. You need to actually create the tables and graphs, and by asking why all the time and delving deep, that is how you end up with a really nice thick full thesis and results that you can publish in peer-reviewed journals. This video is brought to you by my newsletter. Go check it out at andrewstapleton.com.au/newsletter. The link is in the description. When you sign up, you'll get 5 emails over about 2 weeks, everything from the tools I use, the podcasts I've been on, how to write the perfect abstract, and more. It's exclusive content available for free, so go check it out now. Of course, all of this is really dependent on what we mean by the top 10% of students. Now, if you ask any supervisor about their top students, it will be the students that are getting the supervisor exactly what they want, which is papers, peer-reviewed papers in journals, results that they can publish. That is where I think a lot of supervisors place the majority of their kind of attention, is on students that are doing really well by generating papers to further the supervisor's career. Now, there is a certain amount of sucking up to your supervisor, a certain amount of butt kissing you need to do to be on your supervisor's good side. If they want papers, if you want to be in the top 10% of what they consider successful, then you need to produce results. And the second step after that is to sort of formulate papers, peer-reviewed papers. Now go check out my other video where I talk about sort of like writing papers and all the tips and tricks. But suck up to your supervisor by giving them exactly what they want. They will always talk about you to their friends. They will love to brag as well. In my experience, some of the best PhD students show a genuine, enthusiastic interest in their research. Now, I'm not saying that you need to live and breathe your research. I think those are very, very rare. But students who just are kind of excited to find out things about the world they are studying, students that are kind of happy to talk to you about what they are discovering and will kind of help you understand why they are doing what they're doing, have been the most successful students I have ever seen. And it's not to say that you need to be that sort of person, but I think it really does help with the motivation. It really does help with pushing them through the challenges. They have a clear purpose. The purpose is they just like it and they want to find out more. All of the challenges that you come up against as a PhD student or a master's student are easier to overcome if you have a genuine interest and a genuine kind of passion. Now, I don't like using that word because I think it's overused, it's used wrongly, but if you do have a genuine interest that is bordering on a passion for that subject, that is where the top 10 of PhD students lie. And you can actually sort of harbor this interest as you go through as well. You know, you can start sort of delving deeper into the aspects of your research that you actually enjoy so that you can then become that enthusiastic PhD student. Now, this may be simple, but the best PhD and master's students I have ever seen, definitely in the top 10%, actually, and you're going to be blown away by this, actually turn up. Like, they turn up. That is something they do. Not only do they turn up physically between certain times, they're kind of a little bit strict with themselves and say, I'm going to be in the lab between 8 and 5 every single day. That's step 1 of turning up. Step 2 of turning up is actually turning up mentally, being spiritually there and saying, I'm going to use this time to the best that I can. And then when I leave, I can actually look after myself, do all that self-care stuff. And you know what? Even though this sounds really bloody simple, it is one of the easiest things to forget when you're doing your PhD or research is just being there, being in the office, being in the lab, being with your collaborators, being near your supervisor. Actually turning up is a huge barrier, is a big sort of like hurdle that you just have to get over to do work. And we can all convince ourselves that, we should just, maybe go easy a bit today or look after ourselves. And yes, there is a part of that, but I think sometimes we sort of tend towards the more easy life more than we should, particularly during our research. So turn up, even if you don't feel like it. Like, turn up and just see what happens. Spend 10 minutes doing that thing. Those 10 minutes quickly turn into more minutes and you produce more results. And it's an amazing kind of like momentum aspect, is that when you're there, when you start doing something, you want to do more, you want to continue. But I see loads of students just like not turn up to the office or the lab for weeks on end. And I'm not saying that I was perfect by any means, but I was always there when I could be there. And I think the students that I've seen most at risk from failure just do not turn up, which is one of the most sort of like simple, basic, foundational things you should do during your research. Just be there. So turn up physically, turn up mentally. And I think if you do that regularly enough, you can easily get into the top 10% of PhD research students, because it's just kind of the natural progression then that you'll be doing stuff in the lab, getting results, getting those papers. Easy. But for some reason, people don't do it. Another thing that I've seen the top 10% of research and master's students do is speak to their supervisor regularly and use that time to change course if things aren't working. Now, we quite often get stuck or fixated on an idea, an outcome that we really want to make work. Even supervisors aren't immune to being hyper-focused, having tunnel vision to the point where it's detrimental to the overall progress of the research project. So, meeting up regularly, but also challenging your supervisor and challenging yourself based on the results you've got to say, is this the right path we should be going down? Like, sometimes a supervisor is so fixated on an outcome because it's ego driven. They said they would do something, in the grant application, maybe it flies in the face of something they've learned before and they kind of just can't let it go. Whatever it is, just using your research supervisor meetings to actually challenge what you're seeing in the real world without any bias, which is really hard, or without any kind of like certain filter, which is also incredibly hard because we're human, I think is where the top 10% of students really kind of separate themselves from the pack, because they use that time productively and critically to examine where they should go based on where they've been without any of the weird biases that we put into it. And challenging your supervisor is part of that game of actually sort of like just pushing a little bit and saying, I don't think we should be doing this anymore, or I think we should, spend our time doing this other thing because it's better for us based on what I've shown in my research, over the last couple of weeks. Sometimes supervisors just need a little bit of a prodding and a pushing just to ease them into a new direction. So there we have it. There's everything you need to know about what the top 10% of students do differently from the rest of the PhD or master's research cohort. Let me know in the comments what you would add to that. And also go check out academiainsider.com. That's my project where I've got my ebooks, the Ultimate Academic Writing Toolkit, as well as the PhD Survival Guide. And I'll see you in the next video.